factored completely, the expression 12x to the fourth plus 10x cubed minus 12x squared is equivalent to what? So in this problem, it looks like a pretty basic factoring problem, but there is a little twist which we'll see. But let's start with what should jump right off the page at you. What's common to all of these factors? Well, if we take a look here, we have all even numbers, right? So we can definitely take a 2 out of each of these terms. And as far as the exponents go, we have x to the fourth, x cubed, x squared. We should be able to take an x squared out of each term as well. So right away, let's take out 2x squared from each of these terms and see what we end up with. So 2x squared times, that's going to become 6x squared plus 5x minus 6, just 6, yep, because x squared came out. Okay, so we've taken out one factor. Inside we still have this trinomial which we could factor further, but usually we hope to have a 1 as a leading coefficient for the highest power term, and we don't have that here. So we have to recall the technique that you use when you don't have a 1. You can always use the quadratic equation. So if you get in a pinch and you have time, go back and use the quadratic equation. It's okay to do that. So that's negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And in this case, a would be 6, b would be 5, and c would be negative 6. Remember that negative counts. I'm not going to go over this method right now because I want you to remember the original method that you were probably taught at some point during the year, and that is to break this middle term into 2 parts. But how do you decide what those parts should be? And we're going to use the grouping method. So once we divide that middle term into 2 separate terms, we're going to use part of it with this and part of it with this, and then we'll factor each one individually. I'll show you exactly what that means. So the first step of the grouping method, and by the way, we're going to neglect this 2x squared for now. We won't forget about it, but we're really focusing on just factoring this trinomial here. That's all we really care about at the moment. So the way we start the grouping method is to multiply the a term, 6, times the c term, negative 6. So we do that off over here. So we do 6 times negative 6 is negative 36. And we ask ourselves the question, what 2 numbers multiply to negative 36 and add to positive 5? So we need to multiply to negative 36, and we need to add to the middle term, positive 5. The answer we get should be 9 and 4. So which one has to be negative? The 4 has to be negative. So it's going to be positive 9 and negative 4. Those will be the 2 values. So that's the way that we break up the middle term. We take that positive 5x and we break it up into plus 9x and minus 4x. Alright, so now we're going to rewrite this. We're going to keep track of that 2x squared. That's still there, although we're not working with it. We're just tracking it. And this becomes 6x squared plus 9x. And by the way, it doesn't matter if I do plus 9x here or minus 4x. Which one goes first? We'll still get the same answer at the end. Minus 6. Okay, so now we really have 2 mini factoring problems, right? We can deal just with these 2 terms together, and we're going to factor out what's common to them. And then we can deal with these 2 terms together, and we're going to factor out what's common to them. So let's work with the 6x squared plus 9 first. What's common to those 2 terms? Well, we can take out a 3x. And what would we get? We would get 2x plus 3 inside. And I'm going to move to these bigger grouping symbols here. I'll go to brackets so that we can keep track of what we're working on and what we had from before. And then for the second group, we have minus 4x minus 6, so I'm going to factor out a minus 2x from there. And what would we be left with inside? We would have, I'm sorry, it's not 2x, it's just 2. We can't take a 2x out. We would have minus 2x, or rather plus 2x. Let me just clean this up a bit. So this is minus 2 times 2x, and we factor out a minus 2 from minus 6, that's plus 3. And I'm closing my brackets. Okay, so if we did this right, then we should find that what's left in the parentheses in both cases matches up, and it does. It's 2x plus 3 in both cases. And since that's true, we can actually factor out of this entire grouping set everything that's in the brackets from both sides. We can factor out the quantity 2x plus 3. And here's what that now looks like. 2x squared. I'm going to keep those brackets so that I'm showing you what's separate. 2x plus 3. And what's left after we factor out 2x plus 3? We have the 3x and the minus 2, which were what 2x plus 3 was being multiplied by. And now, since it's commutative property of multiplication, we have the 2x squared factor, the 2x plus 3 factor, the 3x minus 2 factor. It's really not necessary for me to carry these brackets anymore. They were helpful here because they showed the separation, but we don't really need them, so we can just take those away. And 2x plus 3, 3x minus 2, and we're done. And that is answer choice 4. Now, if you don't remember this method, this grouping method, go back and practice it. It probably will be on the test. If you can't remember this method when you're taking the test, don't forget that you always have the quadratic equation in your back pocket. This is a tool you can use at any time. Yes, it takes time, which you may be pressed for time, but if you're in a pinch, it is there. And lastly, there's a trick too when taking these multiple choice tests. It's not always true, but typically the answers that look the most similar, it's very likely that one of those two is the right choice. So very quickly you could, if you were really just guessing and you wanted to make an intelligent guess, you might eliminate 1 and 2 straight away and then take a guess from 3 and 4. And what's really the difference between 3 and 4? It looks like these are the same except the sign. You have a negative here and a positive here and a negative here. If you weren't sure, what about maybe just multiplying this and this together? Because it's easier sometimes to multiply two binomial quantities together. We just have to FOIL them and see which one ends up looking like this, 6x squared plus 5x minus 6. It's either going to be this or that. And we could quickly discover that it is in fact 4, and with some intelligent guesswork you'd be able to get the answer quickly without having to go through the whole grouping method, although I do recommend knowing how to do this.